Hello and welcome to City Corner. I'm your host, Todd Blackstock. On today's show, Ken Mallin will join us to discuss the National High School Squash Awards that are coming to the STL. And Emeara Burns and Branden Lewis are here to discuss St. Louis Story Stitchers. So stay with us for this and much more coming up next on City Corner. And welcome to the show. And our first guest today, we've got Branden Lewis, the Youth Artistic Director, and Emeara Burns, the Youth Engagement Specialist from Story Stitchers. Welcome to City Corner on STL TV.
Thank you so much for having us.
We'll start out with you, Emeara. Tell us a little bit about what you do, a little background about Story Stitchers, and how it's such a neat program here in St. Louis.
Absolutely. So St. Louis Story Stitchers, we're a nonprofit organization. Me as youth specialist, I try to make sure we're doing what we can to get the youth in the building, to get the youth understanding that this is a space that you can come and hone your craft, where you can come and network and make friends and get some opportunities, and try to make sure that it's stay in a safe environment. And like Branden was saying, our jobs kind of interlock because we're boots on the ground, in there, and making sure everything is how it needs to be for the youth and for our community to keep thriving.
Well, Branden, you're the Youth Artistic Director or Specialist, and your main function in the organization is, I guess, promoting music. But let's take a step back and talk about the origin of St. Louis Story Stitchers, because it's kind of got a neat title, and it really kind of ties in stitching, tying in some of the things with I guess different things with music and art with different stories. Can you kind of give us a background about that?
Absolutely. So St. Louis Story Stitchers was founded by 8 artists, technically in 2013, but we officially got our 501c in 2014. So St. Louis Story Stitchers ultimately was birthed after a shooting where a young girl was unfortunately killed on her porch. And one of our founders, Susan Colangelo, who was also our executive director for a very long time, up until very recently. She just recently retired this year. But she was reading the newspaper and found out that a young girl had just been killed on her porch, literally just sitting on her porch. Someone walked up and shot her. And her not being from St. Louis, she wasn't all the way aware of how bad a violence problem St. Louis tends to have. And she just really felt like people should be able to sit on their porches without worrying about being harmed. And so she was actually stitching as she was reading the story on the newspaper. And so hence the term Story Stitchers. And that's kind of what lit the spark that snowballed into what Story Stitchers would later become.
So it's kind of like bringing people into the organization, and I know a lot of it discusses mental health and things like that. Emeara, how do you bring the people in, and what's your goal?
So with the mental health PSA, we are taking youth and trying to help them figure out how to destigmatize getting health care for having mental health issues. Because a lot of times people are misinformed, and they just don't have the resources that they need to even know that there's resources out there. So we started to meet weekly to give the youth the opportunity to do research, and we came up with these ideas of skits, songs, videos, still images to help bring across the message to just even start the conversation. Because, so sometimes it's just hard to start the conversation. So we're making this content to hopefully do just that.
Well, we're going to roll out a PSA, the first one here, we've got 2 in just a second, but I can imagine that if you have a relative or someone sitting on their porch and getting shot, poverty and things like that, you could have some mental health issues. So let's go ahead and roll in PSA number 1 about Story Stitchers.
Hey friend, how you been?
I'm alright for real.
Just alright. What's up? You can tell me.
To be honest, life has just been such a burden for me, and I don't think I can keep it going.
Okay, wait a minute, burden? I'm glad you felt brave enough to tell me what's going on, but you should know you deserve help and care no matter what.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You know, it's compelling to see some of the things they talk about, but it's nice to be able to get the word out and have a PSA, a public service announcement, with people that are involved with the program and maybe having mental health issues as well. And, you know, Branden, is it hard to get people to come forward and talk about their mental health issues? Or
Of course.
what do you do to maybe inspire them to come forward?
So absolutely, as a matter of fact, the goal of the PSA is to destigmatize getting help with mental health. So that's the goal of the PSA. Of course, it's 100% hard, especially in the communities that the youth that we serve come from, because they're so focused on physical threats that they don't really have time to, or they don't really consider mental threats like even a realistic thing to worry about, you know, because there's so much physical danger. There's so much danger that I can see. I don't really have time to focus on what I can see. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the youth that we serve survive their environments by trying to turn off their emotions and whatnot. And so getting them to come to a place like St. Louis Story Stitchers and talk about their emotions or to have conversations about mental health, it's unnatural in a lot of ways for them, you know, to be told your whole life, don't feel, don't be sad, don't cry, and then to come to grow up and to all of a sudden be told, no, you should be crying, you're suppressing your emotions, is not a good thing, you know. So that is a very big switch for them to make. And I also think it's important to acknowledge with this PSA that while our youth did a lot of the heavy lifting, we definitely had to partner with mental health professionals in order to ensure that our messaging was accurate, that our research was accurate, that the resources that we were trying to put out were indeed good resources for the goal that we were trying to accomplish.
Now, Emeara, what are the age groups that you're focusing in on, and what's a way that you try to bring people in and bring awareness to Story Stitchers?
So we serve youth and young adults ages 16 to 25. And we have shows, we have open studio nights for youth members, and they can bring new friends, just to kind of fill out the space. And like I said, to network with other youth, figure out what programs they can get involved with through the organization. We have podcast workshops, DJing workshops, just a lot of things for the youth to get involved with, and to come and figure out what they like if they don't know.
And Branden, I know you're heavily involved with the DJs and the artistic part. And what are some of the things you do? Because, just doing a little research and watching some of the Story Stitchers things, you guys are doing music videos and you're singing and you're kind of telling stories. Can you maybe go a little more in depth and talk about the different artistic things and way you communicate? Because you have the story and you can tell it, but then you tell it in a different way, which kind of can relate to some people and tug on them a little bit.
Right. So we're a nonprofit arts organization that works to combat inner city issues through healthy forms of expression. So art is healthy expression. So singing, dancing, rapping, poetry, podcasting, videography, photography, drawing, all of these different art disciplines that we use to show them how to healthily express their emotions. We believe that part of the violence issue is because of the inability to express and assess emotions in a healthy way. And so if I can show you to express yourself in a song or to express yourself through dance or through DJing or whatnot, then you don't feel the need to express yourself in an angry way or in a way that's harmful or in a way that's unhealthy, We're, by doing it the way that we're doing it, we're giving them life skills. And because they're learning how to express themselves in a healthy way, the next time they're in their neighborhood and somebody bumps into them or steps on their shoe or something like that, they have the tools to express why they feel like they don't like what just happened, as opposed to crashing out, as they say.
Yeah. And you can also maybe communicate with these kids and young adults that, the law enforcement and police, they're not all bad. A lot of times, they're on your side. And if you're going about your life and doing your thing, they're good. Right. And I think a lot of young people need to be communicated. And this seems like a great way to, give that issue to the younger adults.
Yes, I would agree 100%. As a matter of fact, part of what we do are story circles and podcasts, and we have good relationships with both the city police department as well as the county police department, and we're able to bring some of them out to have honest conversations and hard conversations, which work to rebuild the trust between the police officers and the citizens that we serve or whatnot, because both sides express accountability and both sides express a want to improve going forward. And so it kind of helps, especially the youth that we serve, to see that not all cops are bad, because the same things that some of our youth don't like about quote unquote bad cops, good cops don't like about quote unquote bad cops, and vice versa. So we are working to rebuild that relationship.
So, Emeara, let's talk a little bit about some of the programs. We've got the community development, workforce development, career pathways, the peaceful coexisting, and you can take it from there and maybe go in depth about some of the programs.
Absolutely. So we do offer internships and I believe employment through Slate and STL Youth Jobs.
Yes.
And
Youth advocacy program as well.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So we have that, and we also have YAP as well.
Yeah, that's youth advocacy.
We partner with a lot of different organizations in the community just to make sure that youth have spaces where they can not only get work experience, but do things that they enjoy doing while getting that experience.
Well, it looks like you've done a lot. You've had over 500 performances over the years. You've got a big event. We got about 30 seconds left. You got a big event April 19th at the Zach Theater. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, so at the .Zac, we're going to be doing Peace of Mind, which is a part of our Peace in the Prairie project. That we're going to tell the story of someone who's unafraid to step outside of their comfort zone, and because they're willing to step out of their comfort zone, they gain skills and healthier coping mechanisms they can now bring back to their neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be a beautiful story. This is a years-long program that we do, and we absolutely encourage people to come out on April 19th. There will be a free matinee show at 3:00, and then there will be a later show, which is more extravagant for $10.
All right, for more information, before we let you go, where would you go to?
You can go to stlouisstorystitchers.org.
stlouisstorystitchers.org.
Yes.
Well, Branden and Emeara, thank you so much for joining us here today on City Corner. Congratulations on your efforts, and that's great what you guys are doing. I really appreciate it, and the community is better for it.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a quick break now. We're going to send you out on the second PSA, and when we return, we're going to talk about the high school squash championships coming to St. Louis with Ken Mallin. Stay with us.
So, how have you been feeling since our last session?
Well, I've been feeling cool, I guess.
Being cool and I guess can sometimes hide something deeper underneath. Now, if you have something to share, I'm here to listen.
Well, life's been crazy. I've been feeling anxious and it's been hard to talk about it. I just don't want to seem weak.
Keeping your feelings bottled up is a sign of weakness. Being truthful about your feelings is a big step toward managing them. You're doing the right thing by talking about it.
Thanks. I'll keep that in mind.
Good. Let's keep going.
Did you know that you can watch STL TV on your smart TV? That's right. With the new STL TV Now app, you can watch STL TV at home without a cable subscription. And that includes our live broadcast channel as well as video on demand content. We have apps for Apple TV, Fire TV, and Roku. You probably have at least one of those at home, right? But this one is a Fire TV. Now listen, it is really easy to get started. Just find the App Store on your TV, then search for STL TV Now. Select it and click to install. And in just a few seconds, you are enjoying STL TV's great programming such as City Corner, Inside Sports, City Government, and public interest coverage. Or, my personal favorite, In the Kitchen.
And welcome back to City Corner. Joining me now is Ken Mallin. Ken's the vice chair for the St. Louis Squash Foundation. I'm sure I butchered the title there, but I tell you what, squash is becoming a big sport. You know, it's taking on racquetball right now, and we've got some really neat things going on at the racquetball club over here in St. Louis, right down the street.
Squash has really grown nationally as well as internationally, and the proof of the pudding is it will be in the Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles.
That's amazing. I know you've got a huge weekend coming up in April, and you've got kids from around the country, the top squash players coming here, and you know, it seems like you've got it really planned out, and you've been doing it for a few years now. And let's take a step back and talk about how you got involved with the Squash Foundation, and then we'll talk about the racquetball situation before that.
Sure. About 5 years ago, several of the members down at the Racket Club and I gathered together and put together the Spirit of St. Louis Squash Foundation. It had two purposes. First was to recognize the best high school squash players around the country, and second, to lobby for squash to be included in the Olympics. We've got to check on that second one. In terms of the first, each year we recognize the National Players of the Year, as well as the best squash players on the East Coast, Midwest, and the West, and also locally. And we bring those players, 8 of them in total, and their families to St. Louis for a long weekend at our expense. And during that time, we have lots of fun here in town, play a little bit of squash, and ultimately they are presented their perpetual trophies down at the Racket Club. Most people call it the Heisman Trophy of high school squash.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And you have a whole slew of events coming in. When I was chatting with you on the phone a couple days ago, I was just amazed by how thorough your organization is with bringing these families in, bringing the kids in, the competitors, and it's a really special, it's a first-class way you've done it, and it's a packed weekend for, you know, at least 2 days.
Well, thank you very much. We put an emphasis on making sure that the kids and their families are recognized for all their hard work. And the most important thing that we have found is that the parents realize that they are going to be shown around town safely, and that they're going to have a good time and spend special time with their kids.
You've got some different ceremonies going on and some interactive things as well.
Yeah. This year, on Friday afternoon, the kids are going to go over to one of the local high schools, Mary Institute Country Day School, and actually we'll have a clinic for local squash players. So the award winners will become the teachers. And so that will go on Friday afternoon. On Saturday morning, they are going to have the advantage of having 2 professionals who are on the national tour right now come in, and they will teach the younger kids how to become better. After that clinic is over, those 2 professionals will have a little battle, a mano-a-mano, if you will, at the club as a kickoff to the gala that night.
Wow. And they must be so excited to have a couple of professionals, and you know they've got some, you know, one's I guess really good in trick shots, and you've got professionals, and the kids, they get to look up and see some of the, you know, dominant people in their profession, or you know, or the sport that they're playing right now, and may, you know, consider playing in the future.
Absolutely. I still remember the first time that we brought in 2 professionals. The kids were getting off of a bus from one of our stops, and they saw the 2 professionals, immediately recognized them, and just like any other fan, ran up, wanted to take pictures, wanted to get their autographs. These kids play a lot of squash, and they know exactly who these professionals are. And it's not just trick shots. It's also just how much time they have devoted to the sport, how they have risen in the world rankings One of our professionals this year won the British Open. He's number 4 in the country. The second is a younger player who is working his way up. In the past, we've had college coaches who've come in. This is a real opportunity for those professionals to share their wisdom, if you will, with the younger kids, and for the younger kids to get essentially a refinement on their path. They already know what they want. They just want a little bit of refinement to make sure they get to the right school. And ultimately, our goal is that we're going to be able to relish in seeing a number of our players play in the Olympics in 2028.
So what's the difference between racquetball and squash?
A lot.
Really? Because it seems pretty similar.
Squash has been around for over 100 years. It actually was started in prison. If you think about the prison yard, that's about the size of the original squash court. Racquetball came about much later in time. If you've played racquetball, you probably know it's kind of like a tennis ball. It has that much bounce. On the other hand, a squash ball has about 1/10 of the bounce. So you have to be athletic, you have to be quick in order to get to the ball because you're only allowed one bounce. If that second bounce happens, your opponent gets the point.
Okay, and then racquetball is a little more fast. It's a little quicker. The ball seems to be going a little faster. It's a little smaller, and it's like bing, 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 bing. It's like,
You've played racquetball?
I played racquetball.
Yeah, I'm going to take you out and play squash, and then you can come back and tell me which is faster.
Well, I'm probably more of a pickleball guy right now, with the terms of my conditioning and where I am in life right now. But as a matter of fact, I believe pickleball may be involved a little bit in this weekend as well.
It is. Our former pro down at the racket club, Mike Portis, actually just set up a new facility in town here called Pickle and Padel. And so, yes, there is definitely a connection. We actually bring the kids and their parents over to Pickle and Padel. There's a real interrelationship between squash and Padel, which is more of a European sport right now. But we let the kids experience Padel and have lunch over at Mike's facility.
That's great. And you were talking about some trophies earlier. I thought it was really neat that some of these trophies, they were like 100 years old, or they've been refurbished from a real special place and time, and you've brought them back, and now they're involved with this weekend.
Well, just like the Heisman, we wanted to make sure that the awards, the perpetual trophies, had some significance, not only currently, but in the past. And the way we did that was we put under contract a silversmith in London. And he was able to locate for us 5 trophies that were basically over 100 years old.
Wow.
And he was able to refurbish them, repurpose them for our purposes. And they now are the perpetual trophies that are awarded each year in April.
And then they get a gala silver tray as well. Is that more like a personal thing they get to keep? Or?
Yeah, each of the award winners receives a personal memento, a silver tray made by that same silversmith. And those are what they take home. And more important than that, believe it or not, is, and for me, one of the emotional parts of the weekend is we present each of the award winners with a banner. If you think about your days in high school, you always remember in the gymnasium, the soccer team or the football team being able to put up their banner after they won a state championship. Well, these kids, although they've had great success, it's really more of an individual sport that most schools don't recognize as a varsity sport. And so what we give to each of these kids is a banner for him or her to bring back to their high school so it can be hung in the rafters.
Wow.
So 10, 20, 30 years from now, they can go back and say, hey, I won that.
Now, are there scholarship opportunities available?
Huge amounts, huge amounts. D1 schools now across the country see squash as being a low cost varsity sport in terms of the amount of travel and things of that nature. And so the teams are probably around 10 to 20 strong at the college level, at D1 levels. And so if you're a young parent and you've got a kid who's interested in ball sports, racket sports, things of that nature, I'd spend a little bit of time looking at squash. It's an incredible opportunity.
It seems like a lot of people, playing squash and growing up playing it, they may not be trying to play it professionally. It could be an avenue for a scholarship, but it's a great opportunity to travel, meet people, and it's a good sport. It's a great way to network. And we mentioned WashU. Washington University is the home of the 1904 Olympics. And the World's Fair was here in St. Louis. It coincided with that. And the kids get a neat opportunity to travel over to that. And maybe you could discuss a little bit about how cool it is for a kid in high school to get to come and see the site of the 1904 Olympics and World's Fair and maybe see some of the history here in St. Louis.
Well, one of the things we're going to do this year with the kids and their parents is to bring them over to Washington University's athletic complex. Just outside, they have the Olympic rings that was just erected 2 or 3 years ago, and we're going to take a group picture there. Part of our thinking is we know some of these kids are going to play in the Olympics, and how much fun will it be that they could look back on that picture and say, I was thinking about it 3 years ago, and today I'm here.
The racket club here in St. Louis on Kings Highway, it's not too far from where we're at right now. It has a rich history, and it's got more of a history than just, sports and racquetball. One of the greatest events in the world inseminated from there. It came from the racket court here club in St. Louis, and I know you want to jump in and talk about that really famous flight from the U.S. across the Atlantic.
I'd be glad to. Most people have heard of Lindbergh's flight from New York to Paris. Most people can guess that the name of the plane was Spirit of St. Louis. They've seen it in one form or another. Most people do not know that the reason why it was called the Spirit of St. Louis was because Lindbergh was going around to many different towns in the Midwest. He was a mail carrier and had a small little plane, and as he visited each of his towns to drop off his mail, he was looking for investors. When he got here to St. Louis, he came down to the Racket Club, and it was the Racket Club and its members at the time who financed his flight from New York to Paris, in exchange for which they demanded that the plane be called the Spirit of St. Louis.
Wow, so that's legendary history that began right here in St. Louis. A lot of people didn't know why it was called the Spirit of St. Louis, if he was, just a resident here and, grew up and did all that. But we got about a minute left, Ken, and I want to give you an opportunity one more time to go around the events of the weekend of the big award ceremony for squash, the high school championships, and a little more information about if someone wants to go.
Sure. Well, first I want to thank U.S. Squash, which is the governing body for squash across our country. These awards are given in conjunction with U.S. Squash. We actually use their rankings in order to determine the winners. So there's no subjective decision made by our foundation. The big awards banquet gala is on Saturday, April 26th. And anyone who's interested in attending should simply go to our website, stlsquashfoundation.com, or send an email to stlsquashfoundation@gmail.com, and we can make arrangements. Again, this is a great opportunity to recognize high school students for spending a lot of time to perfect their skills as squash athletes.
All right, any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to touch on? I know you were raising money, and in 15 minutes, you were telling me you got $500,000, of donations in, and it just seems like a wonderful thing.
Our benefactors were quite generous. They recognized the importance of what we're doing, and I suspect many of them would show up if I invited you over to play squash.
Well, I don't know if I'd make it through, but I'd certainly accept the challenge.
Thank you very much.
Ken, thank you so much for joining us here on City Corner. Well, I tell you what, that's our show for today. We especially want to thank Ken and our studio guests today. We'd like to thank you for watching STL TV. Experience St. Louis.